for February 18th, 2014. This is a mid-year budget review. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the city manager.
Point of order. Can we get a roll call, please? Councilmember Edgar?
Here.
Councilmember Gross?
Here.
Councilmember Kusamoto?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Murphy?
Here.
Mayor Graham Mejia.
Here. And now we'll go ahead and turn it over to the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. We are here tonight to discuss the fiscal year 13-14 mid-year budget review, and we will give you a snapshot of where we are right now at this point in the fiscal year in terms of our overall revenues, our overall expenditures. The main focus at the staff level and the main focus of our report is on the general fund and where we estimate ending up this fiscal year. And so what we have done, and you'll see throughout the report, it's a comparison of budget to estimated actual. So we focus in on the actual revenues and actual expenditures for the period of July 1st, 2013 through December 31st of 2013, and then we project it out. So we have, it's pretty much of a high-level summary type report, and we wanted to do that to try to make it as understandable as we can and explainable as we can to you. And starting with this initial summary that we have of the general fund for fiscal year 13-14, the leftmost column is the budget, where we started the year, and you have a balanced budget at the beginning of 13-14, $11.6 million in total operating revenues, $11.6 million in operating expenditures, and we are tonight coming to you to ask for budget adjustments both on the revenue side and the general fund of $198,000 and additional appropriations of $168,000. And we are, it's important to point out, we're still projecting ending the fiscal year with a balanced budget. So you're still anticipating having a balanced budget with the revenues and expenditures being a little bit better than equal at $29,000 as we end this fiscal year, assuming everything comes in on target with budget. Fund balance, just a brief summary that we've put up on the screen as highlighted in the report. We started the year at a little under $7.6 million, $7.7 million, and we're still anticipating ending the fiscal year and fund balance reserves totaling $7.7 million. And this is a summary of all of the categories within the general fund. Primarily, this shows our top tax producers within the general fund. Property tax and sales tax make up almost 50%, and utility users tax is the third highest source at 17%. This is, again, we are totaling $198,000 that we're requesting in additional revenues. And this is by category. Property taxes, we're anticipating coming in right almost on target with the original budget. A little bit of a difference in $11,000, and Linda will go into that briefly in the next slide. Sales and use tax, we have a drop of $51,000. This is based on an estimate provided by the state that is reducing that. Other than that state estimate, which is $51,000, we're projecting coming in on target with sales tax. Utility users tax, this is slightly down in terms of all of the utility users tax, and so overall very close to the original budget. And you can see that after that election, which reduced the telephone utility users tax and modified the formula, we're still coming in very close to on target in total utility users tax. We have the main category, the biggest part of the story here, which is good news, is on licenses and permits. We're asking to increase the revenues a little under $180,000, and that is primarily for the hospital project. So that tells a lot of the story, both on the revenue side, and you'll see some additional appropriations related to that on the expenditure side, and it's related to the hospital project, and it just additional plan checks and building permits that have come in more than anticipated in the original budget. We have some miscellaneous revenue. This is revenue that came in from the trash hauler for the trash audit, primarily, that is included in that category. And so overall, if approved, it will be at $11.8 million in general fund revenues. Linda, I'll turn it over to Linda at this point to briefly go over the adjustments.
As the city manager mentioned, the property tax revenue estimate is being reduced slightly. That has to do with prior year property tax collections are a little bit behind what was anticipated. The property tax in lieu sales tax is being reduced to $51,000, and that has to do with a revised estimate that was received through the state Board of Equalization. And primarily what this is from the catch-up payments having to do with the triple flip and the debt payment that the state takes ahead of time and then they reimburse us for through property tax. Business license revenue is up by $35,000, and that's basically based on proactive collection of business licenses. Utility users tax, we're reducing that by the almost $16,000, and that has to do with the voter-approved decrease in the tax rate for the telephone use tax. Licenses and permits, as the city manager mentioned, is increased primarily related to the hospital project. You will note whenever we get to appropriations that there is a slight offset in expenditures for that. Investment earnings is what it is. It's based on lower cash balances as well as yields that are just remaining low. The recreation revenues, it has to do with a review of all of the programs that the Recreation Department provides and increased participation in those. Miscellaneous revenue, $30,000 of that is for the compliance audit. There's a couple of small grants are composed in that, as well as some insurance reimbursements. And then we have...
Yeah, the next set of charts that you see are basically trend analysis of the general fund revenues, starting with property tax. So we analyzed it going back to the actuals for 2007, 2008 through the projected for this fiscal year, and just to show you a 6-year history of each of the major revenue sources. So starting with property taxes. And we have sales tax with a peak. Last year, we had budgeted a little bit less. In this fiscal year, we're still anticipating coming in on target with that budget in the sales tax. Utility users tax, you can see pretty flat over time with a slight drop between 12-13 and 13-14. And franchise fees, the majority of this, a little over $600,000 in revenue from franchise fees we receive in April, so we have not received that yet. But historically, we have been right on target, and we're anticipating staying on target with that revenue source as well. And fines and forfeitures as well, just a slight drop between 12-13 and 13-14, but still staying on target with budget. And now we get into expenditures. I also wanted to mention, we did meet today with the budget subcommittee that is Mayor Pro Tem Murphy and Councilmember Edgar, and so we did give a preview with them, and we plan on meeting pretty regularly throughout the budget process, and I think it's going to be a really good tool for the council and for the public as we go forward. I think it's going to work out really well. So if either of you two have any comments related to that, and you can stop me anytime as well as we go through this. I'm going to get into the general fund expenditures at this point.
Well, just on what you've covered so far, I just think that, you know, we should congratulate the staff on coming in within 1% of the budget. I know you guys weren't here when but you know, you're here now, so you might as well take credit for it. And to my colleagues who voted for the utility tax, you apparently got it right. You know, the big thing was revenue neutral, and everybody took a lot of heat. I mean, Dean and I talked a lot, but we were up for election, so we had to. But you guys actually took the heat, and the numbers preliminarily looks like it's coming in right where we would hope, that we've expanded the base but reduced the rate, and hopefully will remain as it's going there. Thank you.
So I have some questions we may ask. So kind of going back a couple charts on the...
Do we want, does Troy need to say anything first?
Let me just, Again, no, that's okay. I think the headline for this, sometimes, we go through all the detail and we say, okay, what did this just tell us? And I think the headline for this is that the budget remains balanced. And the minor adjustments that we're talking about have to do with the revenue and the offsetting expenses due to the hospital. That's the summary. And that the reserves are untouched. There is some policy issues that I think that we will talk about and bring back to you, and probably part of the budget process for 14-15. Specifically, fund topics like the garage fund, the police budget, utility users tax, and the projections. This showed the $15,000 reduction as a mid-year adjustment, but if you remember, we reduced it actually $70,000 in the budget. So it's a net pretty good reduction, and like Rich says, to hit the 1% reduction amount. But there's a couple items to talk through. But I think with that, there's probably some details in here that you guys want to go through. Rich and I are also very interested on the scope and the objectives that you guys would like us to accomplish in the budget ad hoc workshops. We really want to work on some of the policies to bring forward, like I said, refining the budgets and the reserves policies and some of the other things like that. But if there's anything specifically that you would like to assign us to work on and save time in the budgeting process, we're more than happy to. Thank you.
Warren? Oh.
If we back up on the sales tax, I kind of get the sense that things are kind of picking up in the economy, but this is kind of, to me, telling a different story. Is there a soundtrack that goes with this?
Well, the only thing I can say that it was a peak in 12-13, so we would have to actually compare budget to actual in 12-13, and I think that it was a rosier. It ended up better at the end of fiscal year 12-13 than originally projected. The 13-14 budget, I think right now we only have 1 quarter worth of sales tax, and so it's difficult to really do a full estimate of that. It does look like, in talking with our sales tax consultants, that we're on target and maybe a little bit ahead of schedule. That $2.6 million is the, other than the $50,000 adjustment that Linda mentioned, is the target, is the budget. So we did not lower that estimate other than that 50,000. We may end up the year a little bit better than that.
So in 12-13, that 2.746, that's kind of a, I'll say aberration as far as the bump?
I think so. I mean, as we meet with our sales tax consultants, I'll get more information. We're going to meet in about 2 weeks, and so I'll get that information back out to the council and give an update based on, through the newsletter, based on the meeting that we have with them, and try to give as much as I can as we go forward, the quarter actuals compared to the quarter of the year before, because that's the way to really focus in on 1 quarter at a time. How did we do this fiscal year for this quarter
Compared to the last year's. Okay, and then
last year's
the other
quarter.
question on the property tax, same kind of trend, right, where it's, is that kind of to be expected? What's the?
Yeah, I think we still probably will end up a little bit better than anticipated on that. Again, we have the same consultants on sales tax that we do with property tax, so I got more information from them even today, but I need to put that together and give that to the council.
Okay, so we can wait to see year-by-year comparison.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's going to depend on the assessed valuation. That's the biggest impact.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That's all.
Back to you.
Now, this is the high-level picture on the general fund expenditures. So, again, the leftmost column is our general fund budget by category. These are all the categories within our general fund, all of the departments. This is our $11.6 million original budget. This is, as I mentioned, this is the $168,000 that we're requesting in additional appropriations tonight. We want to seek direction from the council on these items. And we'll go into some more detail about what each of these items are. If they are approved, then our amended budget will be $11.8 million for 13-14 at this time. The capital projects and programs, these were originally budgeted out of reserves, $193,000. We've spent only a little bit under $8,000 more than the original amount. So if we get that appropriation approved by the council, we'll be at $201. Right on target with the original budget, again, in that category. And we'll have a slide to show what that is as well. And this is the picture of general fund expenditures, police department, public works, recreation, administration, community development, the biggest departments within the general fund. And I will let Linda go through this, and we can take any questions as we go through. We're trying to, again, give you an overview of what the appropriations are that we're requesting and seeking direction on tonight.
In the police department, there's an appropriation of $38,350, which is being requested to oversee the purchase and implementation of a new CAD RMS software system. Community development's additional $33,000, or almost $34,000, consists of the $7,920 additional necessary to finish the business and residential improvement program, which finished, I think it was in March. And then $26,000 is necessary for building inspection and additional public hearing noticing. In Public Works, there's an $86,000 increase. There are several components to that amount. There's $22,000 for the compliance audit, the solid waste compliance audit, in which there was a general fund revenue offset. There's plan check fees in addition of $25,000. And $27,000 is being budgeted for additional sports field maintenance having to do with the new user fees. And then building maintenance, there's $7,000 for City Hall improvements having to do with replacement of some beams, I believe. And then there's an additional $5,000 for utilities in case of the water drought, or the drought in the community. Recreation is basically on target with the budget, to meet their budget. And then in the transfers out area, there's a $19,000 budgeted to provide funds to the garage fund for the purchase of field maintenance equipment having to do with the new user fees. And those pieces of equipment include a trailer and a knife aerator. Then, like as mentioned before, the use of fund balance reserves of the general fund capital projects and programs, we're increasing that by the $7,920, which was mentioned whenever I was talking about community development.
Okay, and then now we go on to special revenue funds. These are all restricted funds, which the city, that's a list of the special revenue funds that we do have. So the monies that come in are categorized by the use and are restricted to that type of use, as is demonstrated here. And there's really, everything is on target at mid-year in terms of the story. There is one in terms of gas tax. Linda can go into the detail, but there is a reduction there in the estimated ending of revenues because we got a revised estimate from the state on downward, about $50,000 on gas tax, and that's why you see that negative fund balance there estimated at the end of June 30th, 2014. Staff is aware of that. Staff will be working within the capital improvement projects that were funded with gas tax to make sure that that fund balance ends up positive at the end of the fiscal year. So we can go, with that, we can go into the next slide. And
This is just basically a description of the various funds, special revenue funds that the city has. The Prop 1B fund is for reconstruction and rehabilitation of the city's streets and roads, and there's one project budgeted there this fiscal year. CDBG fund is, the city was unable to garner any funds for the current fiscal year for any improvements, but we're hoping next year that there will be some additional funds available. As the city manager mentioned, the gas tax fund, we received a revised revenue estimate for one of the portions of gas tax in the amount of, and so we're suggesting that revenue be reduced by the $48,760. In the meantime, staff is reviewing all of the projects and will be deferring projects to make sure that the fund balance remains in a positive territory. Then let's see what's next. Public Safety Augmentation Fund and Supplemental Law Enforcement Service Funds are funds that are used are monies that are received for the assistance with the city's police department budget. And Air Quality Management Fund is accounts for the AB 2766 funds, which are used for air quality improvement purposes. Last fiscal year, we purchased 2 hybrid vehicles, and this fiscal year, we have nothing budgeted for expenditure there. Measure M fund is also for the city's transportation issues having to do with streets and roadways. There are 3 projects currently budgeted in that particular fund. The asset seizure fund is accounts for the assets that are related to drug activities that the city police department has been able to take care of. And this year, we've got $39,500 budgeted for the purchase of police equipment. And the only change here is that instead of purchasing the police department electronics and digital evidence equipment, we have been told that we need to replace our citation equipment with electronic citation equipment. The Los Alamitos Television Fund is basically gets funds from the public education government fees, and it's anticipated that it will be in target with budget. The Office of Traffic Safety Fund is a fund that accounts for a grant that's used also to help our police department in the reduction of DUI and related collisions. Then we go into the debt service and capital projects funds. We first have the Laurel Park Debt Service Fund. This fund accounts for the debt service on the city's certificate of participation that was issued in 2006. I know that in the past, there's been some discussion about the prepayment of this particular debt issue. I looked at the covenant of the bond issue, and we can make the first, if we wanted to refinance, it cannot be done until September 1st, 2016. And so far, to date, we've paid $395,000 towards that debt, and so we still have a balance of $2,970,000. Then we have the capital projects funds, which consists of the residential streets and alleys, building improvement funds. Both of those funds are funded through general fund contributions. In the building improvement, there's nothing, no projects budgeted in the streets and alleys fund this fiscal year. In the building improvement fund, there are 3 projects that are listed above, budgeted for the current fiscal year. In the Park Development Fund, the city has started receiving park development fees as a result of some of the development. I think it's the Sausalito project. And so we've increased the revenue by $18,250, which is money that we have already received this fiscal year, and there are 2 projects budgeted there. The Rivers and Mountains Conservancy is a grant fund. The city is, as you are well aware, is constructing the Coyote Creek Park Improvement Project. And that fund, although it's showing a negative fund balance on the list, we do anticipate receiving all of the funds related to that. The Traffic Improvement Fund is primarily funded with traffic mitigation fees and developer fees. There are several projects that, as listed, budgeted for this fiscal year. Okay. Internal service funds, the city basically has 2 internal service funds. It's the Garage Fund and the Technology Replacement Fund. In the Garage Fund, there was no capital equipment budgeted this fiscal year. However, it has come to our attention that we need to budget for the police motorcycle this fiscal year in order to get the model It has to be ordered, the model that matches the equipment we have. It needs to be ordered by the 1st of July, so we felt that it was necessary to go ahead and ask for an appropriation for that replacement. And, oh, I'm out of order. I'm sorry. And then I'll finish with the garage fund, and then I'll go back to the technology replacement fund. The other change in the garage fund is the purchase of 2 pieces of equipment, a trailer and a knife aerator for the field maintenance improvements, and that is offset by a transfer in from the general fund. Then back to the technology replacement fund. The technology replacement fund is also funded by the general fund throughout, and it's for operations and maintenance of various pieces of technological equipment. This fiscal year, there are replacement computers and software budgeted, the online class registration software for the recreation department, and the city hall generator replacement. And that is it.
So at this point, we have a summary, and then we have a slide that talks about heading into the next fiscal year, but this might be appropriate time to take any additional questions on the expenditure side, general fund or otherwise that you may have.
Warren's got some questions.
Sure, thank you. So, Linda, you said something about the police citation equipment, that we have to buy that. Perhaps it can be elaborated?
Please, the microphone. That's really professional. Cluster up.
Sure. Members of the council, electronic citation technology is being introduced to Orange County, and it's currently a project of the Integrated Law and Justice Agency, which we are a partner of. And the ILJ has been in the process of creating electronic citation systems to be introduced to the Orange County police agencies. However, recently, there's been a push by our courts to fast-track that. The courts are looking at budget cuts to where they are going to cut the data processors that are involved in doing the data processing of the information. And they actually informed us just a few months ago that if we don't soon adopt these electronic citation devices, the citations that we write are going to be backlogged drastically to the extent that it might threaten the enforcement of our traffic violations.
So are there any other, upcoming technology that we kind of need to start looking at planning for in the next, couple, 3 years? As, something like this, I don't know how long it's been in place, but I don't know if it's a surprise to us and now an expenditure, but or something that we were aware of it, just that we finally have to get around to doing it. So do you have any other things that we need to kind of think about?
Not coming to the top of my head right now.
Okay.
Other than the 800 megahertz radio upgrade that you're familiar with and the records management system.
Can I clarify that? It's not 800 megahertz upgrade, it's a 700 megahertz?
It's actually an 800 megahertz.
So what's 700 then?
Well, I don't know if you can do a better job explaining this than I can.
The migration was designed to go from 800 megahertz to 700 megahertz just to expand the scope so that they could add more partners to it and more dimensions to the system. They looked for a way to make some cuts to save some money because everybody squealed at those first amounts that came out in terms of the projected costs. And so now they say they're cutting it back and we probably won't go over that edge into the 700 megahertz range. But the program all along has been called the 800 megahertz migration, anticipating that it would land in the 700 megahertz range by the time it was finished. This year, they're kind of, scaling that back a little bit, so whether or not we'll actually get to 700 megahertz remains to be seen. But right now, they're saying we probably won't hit that far. But they've always called it 800 megahertz because that's where we are right now.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
But the equipment to migrate to 700 is what we're going to be installing?
Most of the components of the equipment will work on either, but they're stopping just short because they were able to save some money by not going all the way into the 700 megahertz range. It just would have enabled us to go out and add additional partners, and they're finding that we can probably accommodate everybody on this system and save the money, and if we have to, go back and add that later on. But I'm anticipating they probably won't do that because they understand everybody's a little concerned about those costs at this point.
So I guess the equipment that we have that operates at 800 megahertz is not compatible with the new 800 megahertz?
The big change is there's a federal requirement to go to what's called P25 compatibility, and we have to go to that level of compliance. And the other part is that the equipment that we're running on in the 800 megahertz realm right now is actually past its life expectancy. So when one of our radios quits working, we send it up to control to be fixed, and they wait until they can find a replacement part on eBay, or somebody else sends in a radio that has fallen apart, and they can take a piece off of that to make ours work. So we've actually had radios that have been out of service for a couple months at a time while they're trying to find parts, because the manufacturer just doesn't make the parts
No, I
anymore.
understand that. Okay. If I may, some other questions. On the aerator and trailer, presumably those are the trailers for the aerator, the knife aerator? Before?
Yes, basically
And- And then, so I guess the question is the renting or buying and owning, and I don't know, this is probably a depreciable asset or something that'll have some lifetime, so did we look at all that? Is it, do we have to own one is my question?
We do have to own one, and remember the City Council, the reason for that is if we were to rent this aerator, we would be renting it on basically about 3 weeks a month to be able to
Oh, okay.
accomplish the work we need to, so it doesn't pan out.
No, that makes sense, okay. That was my question, thank you.
Okay. Any other council members have a question?
Are we at that point now?
I believe they said that this is a good time, good opportunity for you to speak.
So why do we need a new $10,000 trailer for this?
The trailer is to speed up the production of the additional work that needs to be done for the recreation and also some of the school district agreements. It'll speed up our production with having a limited staff crew, with having an additional trailer. Basically, we don't have to have staff back to the yard, grab equipment, take it to this park, come back to the yard, grab another equipment, and take it to this yard. It'll speed up our productivity.
And you're saying that's going to be used 3 weeks out of the month?
The trailer will be used 4 weeks out of the month, and will, especially during the summertime, because mowing is going to need to be done 2 or 3 times a week at McCullough, at Cottonwood, at Laurel, and also at Orville Lewis Parks.
One of the concerns that I have is that at one of the school district meetings, maybe it was a January ad hoc, December, they've already bought equipment, 2 new mowers, they've already hired personnel to do all of this, and the $5 participant fee, which was supposed to be used for the ongoing maintenance and maintaining the quality, got changed by the school district before we voted on it, and we just simply approved what they went through. It was to be $5 in January of this year, $5 in January of 2015, and the superintendent changed it to $2 per year for the next 5 years, saying, well, it's new money, we're really not sure what we're going to be using it for, so spreading it over 5 years isn't a problem. My concern is we got the school district going gung-ho doing things, spending money. We're going to start doing the same thing. Where's the funding coming in, and where's the cooperation in the process? Does the school district use an aerator, and do they use it for the same frequency?
Why don't you have Parks and Rec answer that for you, or Community Services, I'm sorry.
Yes. Thank you, City Council. We actually discussed at our last staff meeting that we had with the school district about the possibility of sharing equipment and that sort of thing. We actually have a meeting next week, both our Public Works and their maintenance department, to get into a little bit more detail about those. But the initial discussion basically was the school district has, I believe it's 9 fields that they have to maintain. Their maintenance staff does just that. They have staff that are basically on mowers and aerating and doing that at all of their schools almost 5 days a week. So the ability for us to utilize their equipment was extremely difficult, if not totally impossible. It would very much so limit our Public Works ability to do the job when they needed to do it, and the frequency that they needed to do it, and the schedule that they would need to do it, and the types of equipment and that sort of thing. So it was, that's why we're bringing everybody back in to continue those discussions, but because of the frequency of their maintenance crew maintaining not just Oak, but part of McAuliffe, and all the elementary schools and the high school, the frequency of them utilizing their equipment is almost on a daily basis.
It seems to me like there's duplication from the standpoint of they're doing things on their property, we need to do things per the agreement on their property. It doesn't seem to me to be as efficient from the standpoint of what needs to be done. And needing to buy additional equipment, all of these things, the idea is to try and improve efficiency and improve what we're doing. If they're maxed out on their current property and we're also involved in doing their property, I'm just confused because I don't think we're moving in the same path as what we're doing duplicating wise. And I would hope that the discussions with the school district and your department of Public Works help to figure out how they can do things more efficiently rather than duplication wise. It seems silly to have the school district going through doing stuff at McAuliffe and not doing the field at the same time. And then we come along behind and do the field. And in the process, maybe we do all of McAuliffe as an example, and they do all of Oak or something to that effect, rather than us doubling up in the process of what we're doing.
And we're discussing those things with the individual joint use agreements. Currently, the individual joint use agreement has us maintaining the large field of McAuliffe, and the school district maintains the track field at McAuliffe, and the school district maintains all of Oak. So in the discussion with the IJUAs, we've discussed the opportunity to, again, it's the opportunity for us to start from scratch and determine whether that's the best use of resources. With that, if we take over all of McAuliffe with that example, there will be an increase of cost. It'll cost more staff time for Tony's crew. That field needs a lot of TLC right now. It's probably it's extremely dilapidated, so we need to venture into that. If we take over that, then do we need to fix it up to get it to a higher level standard, and also realize the higher level of field is the McAuliffe level. That's what we've said all along. That's what the user groups have always wanted. They want all the other fields to look as nice as McAuliffe does. That's Tony and his crew that maintains it at that level. So the school district, they bought $500,000 worth of equipment, we're told, and brought on 2 full-time people to hopefully bring their fields up to the level that Tony's crew is struggling to maintain McAuliffe at. Some of that's Mother Nature, and some of that's just a lack of abilities and resources. So we will enter those discussions during the IJUA to make sure that we are operating, and that's why we're bringing both our maintenance guys and they're bringing their maintenance guys in to say, this is the best way to operate. We've already got the machinery out there to take a couple laps on the track field. Maybe that's easier, or keep doing things the way that we are, and it's working out really well, and that's what we're going to determine.
I'm just concerned, we sold this program to the user groups with the additional fees, which hadn't been raised for a long time, and user fees like we're doing kind of at the pool. If we're not able to do that, somebody in this process is going to catch a lot of negative feedback that you said we were going to, and I'm not hearing, in my opinion, I'm not hearing good feelings that we're prepared to do that, and yet we've kind of pushed this out, approved the fees, so now we're going to have to perform. And I just hope that we're not pushed back against a wall to where we can't perform within the confines of what we did fee increase.
And that's what we're basing all the fees and the maintenance on, is based on the recommendation from the PRZ report. That's why Tony said that they need to bring out the equipment, because they need to mow, instead of, an average of one time a month, they need to mow 1.5 times, or, every 2 weeks or something like that. They need the knife aerator because the plugs is only supposed to be done once or twice a year, but the knife aerator should be done up to 15 times a year. Well, we don't even have that piece of machinery to be able to do that. And, that helps, cut the soil and be able to, get the nutrients into where they need to go. We're putting in fertigation that's hopefully going to help. That typically takes a couple years for it to really feel the effect, but that's over at Laurel, and we're starting to see that it's green year-round, and so I think we said all along it's not going to happen overnight. Little Cottonwood Park, for example, it needs a nice repair like Laurel got in order to then bring it up to that standard. That's what they're doing at Oak right now with their $2 million project that they're doing. It basically ended in disrepair, so it needs to be cleaned up, start over, and then the hope is over the next 30 years, that brand-new looking field will be able to last another 30 years before it has to be done again.
Would it be possible, I'm sorry,
No, that's okay.
would it be possible to when you have your meeting, to get a report that addresses Dean's concerns, that we're making best use of the equipment between everybody's equipment, that all the resources considered as a whole are being used? Obviously, you're on top of it, but when you're done, something in the weekly maybe that just lets us know.
We can either share that in the weekly or at the city school working group. That I'll let the city manager make that decision where he wants to get it, but we'll definitely.
Thank you.
Right, and one of the new things we're doing is Brett's taken it, some direction to make sure that there's a reporting out from those school district working group meetings so that everybody on the council is informed as to what's going on. Just very briefly, so that we can finish up here, these items have been being talked about for some time in order to provide a better quality, and so I think that Corey has done an excellent job on working with the school district. And Corey, like they said, when we get through this process, just a reporting out so we know exactly all of the things that are going to be happening. And let's go ahead and pass it back to staff so we can finish.
Okay, so to summarize, in terms of the general fund recommendations, this is the list in one place of all the revenues that we're asking the council to approve, increasing the revenues, with the majority of that under license and permits related to the hospital project. That's the $198,000, and then in the expenditure side, we've gone over each one of these items, with the police 38, community development 26, which is related to the consulting fees, again, with the hospital. The public works portion is made up of, again, consulting fees related to the hospital, the audit that we mentioned, $22,000 for the waste hauling audit, $7,000 for building improvements, $5,000 for water utilities, and $27,000 that we just talked about related to the field maintenance. And that is what makes up those requests. So, and we have some other fund recommendations as well that Linda can briefly go through that.
Yes, basically, we're increasing the revenue and expenditures in Prop 1B by $26,000. This was previously discussed whenever a contract was let for the commercial rehabilitation program. Decrease revenue in the gas tax fund by the $48,760. Increase revenue in park development fund by the $18,000. And decrease expenditures in the traffic improvement fund by $14,000. This again goes back to the project I previously mentioned. And increase revenue by $19,000 and expenditures by $46,000 in the garage fund. And that's basically.
And just, we can either take, if you can check on consensus of the council for approving the revenue items. We're looking for the direction revenue and expenditure items at this time, and then I can talk briefly about the planning for the future and the things that are coming up for 14-15 as we get into the budget process.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion
I'll
then.
make a motion that we accept staff recommendation as recommended.
Second?
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you. And as we get into planning for the future, in terms of 14-15, we do have some obstacles as we head forward. We have the effects of the ongoing Police Officer Association, City Employee Association negotiations taking place right now. We have increasing retirement rates that we have from PERS for 14-15 and for 15-16. Will be going up the next 2 fiscal years, has an impact on our general fund. Effects of long-term pension and health benefit obligations. We have, as we've discussed tonight, the new police dispatch and record system and the 800 megahertz communication system. We have consideration, as has been discussed before, a video archive and meeting management system. We always need to continue to review our workers' compensation, general liability premiums, and the impact on the general fund. We have an ADA compliance study and future improvements that we'll need to be moving forward with. And we've discussed tonight also the effects of the joint use agreements with the Los Alamitos Unified School District. Corey and his staff are meeting with the school district staff on an ongoing basis. We'll give updates to the council, and we'll tie it into the budget process, and we'll probably give reviews and updates to the budget committee as well, and dovetail that into the process as well. So those are the items. We do continue to project a balanced general fund budget for this fiscal year 13-14, and we're moving on to the 14-15 budget process.
Okay. Can I just add, one thing I would like to bring to the council's attention is part of the I-405 working group. We have been working with Townsend and Associates as the public relations, and they've been very, very effective for the corridor cities. In the past year, they had asked for a donation of $5,000 from each of the corridor cities. Los Alamitos did not participate in that. We are now into the second year. They have continued to represent us, and I think that I'd like to bring it to your attention and see what your opinions are on paying our fair share. I think that they've been instrumental in keeping us from having those toll lanes. Right now we have one general purpose lane, but the fight is still continuing. So I would just like to bring that up to the council to see if we have a consensus for support for that. And Troy?
Yeah, well, just for myself, I'm absolutely supportive of paying our fair share. It's been a 2-year process.
Right.
And we appreciate what you guys have been doing, working on that, and you specifically. So I'd be supportive, and I would just ask that you let Rich and I take that on as we prepare our take to prepare to you guys for the budget.
Right.
We'll put that in as a placeholder. The last thing I would say, if you go back one slide, and this is just for me from a closing, there's some tremendous amount of work for the Budget Ad Hoc Committee, and so this really, what we hope to be able to do is to bring back something that's vetted, that we fully understand the detail of these items and the budgeting process of how they're going to fund it. We also realize that the POA and CEA negotiations are there. We've got a tremendous amount of pressure on our budget right now. We have capital improvement stuff that's out there. We've got workers' comp and liability issues. We've got technology. There's a lot of stuff that's going on that we need to kind of take into account. And I think at this point, too, I think the council needs to be very mindful as we get ready to get into the negotiations with the POA and the CEA that we don't look at, I mean, it's a rosy picture that we've ended at the year, but remember, we fought last year to bring the revenue down and keep expenses on track, and we did a great job. We still got a problem, and we got to make sure that we get ready for these negotiations. You know, the biggest issue that we complained about last budget, when we set this budget in motion in June, was that the police had grown by 17% over the last 2 years. Chief had come back to us in private and said, hey, look, you guys, you got to be responsible for a big portion of that, because you had approved contracts early on that really tried to get the police department fully staffed to make sure that we were taking care of our folks. And I think we did a good job. Now, 3 years have went by and it's here again, so we can't sit back as a council and look at staff and point fingers. We need to take responsibility. And again, I'm hoping that with the negotiations with POA and these items that at the ad hoc level, I know Rich and I are committed to put in as much time as we can. Rich, I don't know if you have anything.
Well, I just, in this cozier setting, I just want to mention that Linda is leaving us again. We just owe you so much. You bailed us out so many times. There should at least be a bust of you in the finance department. Now, you've given us great advice, but you're really jumping into the fire, and I want to wish you luck
Right.
in your hometown, and hopefully able to bail out their problems as you've been able to help us here.
Right.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
No, just echo the same.
Okay. So we're going to go ahead and adjourn this meeting to the regular meeting at 6 o'clock, the February 18th, 2014 regular meeting.